Hello, friends. Welcome to Tammy's Knitting Podcast. Today is part 4 in the series of sock tubes for dummies. Today I'm going to show you adding your cuff, toe, and heel to the sock tube. The last video we picked up our stitches and we divided and cut our sock tube. Okay, so I've worked around my whole sock tube and I'm on to the very last few stitches, and this is what I end up doing here. So I have my last stitch here. I want to take my yarn that is on the front needle, the one I slipped. So I have my stitch here. I want to take that yarn from the front needle, wrap it around along with my cuff yarn and knit that together. Okay, we're going to turn our work, and this is like you were doing magic loop or whatever. Pull your needle around. Now if you're doing 9-inch circulars, you would just rotate around. You wouldn't have to pull your stitches at all. But now you have your first stitch. Now we are going to take both of our yarns and we are going to work them together in this stitch. Now we're going to start our ribbing. Now you don't have to. You could do another round of knit stitches, or you could work together and do your ribbing. I think I'm going to do since I've got a carry of this, I'm going to do another round of knit stitches to just tie in this stitch as well all the way across until I get done, and then I will actually start onto my ribbing. But let me show you once I get to the one end here how it no longer has a hole there. And then I usually just take and pull these down so that they're tight, and it pulls that tight, and you don't notice. It's a little thicker there, but you really don't notice it too much. And like I said, I make sure that's the back of the sock, so it's not like on the front in case there's any change of color there that is noticeable. Okay, let me finish this row here and I will show you what that end looks like now that we've tied it together there. Okay, so now that we've tied it together, we no longer have a hole here. Those stitches are carried together. And you just have to remember, when you get here, you have 2 stitches here to pick up and knit together. But there's no longer a hole here, where if you just took your yarn, and now if you don't tie your ends in, that's fine. You could tie it backwards, but you would still have a hole. I tried it multiple different ways. I still had a hole because it basically cast this one off, and then I had this one here, and then I tried to bring it around, and there was just a hole there. And I just was not happy with the hole there. So this is what I came up with to kind of get rid of your hole, and it works the same as when you're doing your toe. Well, your toe, you're working down, so you really don't, your yarn is already coming from the other side. But I always do, when I do magic loop and anything like that, and I'm adding a new color, I always take the last stitch, the yarn that's on that stitch, and I bring it to that front needle just to close that gap. I've always done that, and I don't know why I didn't think of doing that with this, but it was just like, it should be on the back needle. Why isn't it on the back needle? It's already on the front needle. I need it to be on the back needle. And it just really flustered me, and it took me a long time to figure this out. And I asked a ton of people, and finally somebody suggested slipping that first stitch and then bringing your yarn around. And I was like, oh, that will work. So that's what I ended up doing now. But that's how I close in my gap, so that I no longer have a hole and I can keep my stitches going right along. So now all I'm going to do is do my cuff. I will finish my round of uh, stockinette stitch here. So it'll be 2 rounds of stockinette, and then I will go into my ribbing and do my ribbing for an inch, inch and a half, whatever it is, and we'll go from there. So that is how I cover the holes when so I don't have holes when I'm doing my adding in my next color. Okay, I have my cuff of my sock done, and as you can see, there is no hole here. Now that you can see a little bit better, but now we need to bind off. And like I said, normally I would only do half this on my cuff down socks, but if I don't wait till it starts to curve in here, it just flares out and kind of like ruffles. For me, now I don't know, maybe it's just the way I do my ribbing, I don't know, but it flares out for me, so I have to do a little bit more of a cuff. So this is a little more than an inch of a cuff here, and now I'm going to do my cast off. And the cast off that I used, and I will put the link down below, is Jenny's super stretchy bind off. And that is basically, you're going to knit your first one, yarn over, knit your next one, and then pull both of them off. Yarn over, knit, and pull both of them off. And this will give you a nice stretchy bind off, so that it's not too tight when you go to do your when you're done with your sock. At least you'll be able to tie it to get it on your foot. If you don't do a stretchy bind off, now if you have another one that you like, that's fine. This one I found that is pretty easy, and I do like it. So if you have another one that you like, go ahead and do that. I'm going to bind off the cuff of this sock. You don't need to see me do that. I can just get it done, and then we will be done. But that is the Jenny super stretchy bind off. Again, I will put that information down below so that you guys have that. And we are done with the cuff of our sock. We've got our cuff, and we're going to put a toe on this, and then we are going to put our heel in. So I am going to flip the camera around and show you those steps on how I do it. So let's get into the video. Okay, so we are ready to put the toe on of our sock. And again, as you can see, the yarn is coming from the front. We're going to do the same thing here that we did with our cuff, and we are going to slip that first stitch. So let me get my yarn ready here to add on. And usually I add at least 3 or 4 rows, again, of straight knitting before I start any decreasing. It just makes it easier when you start decreasing that you don't drop a stitch because you have too many. I like to weave my ends in as I'm doing it. So I slip the first stitch, and then I'm just going to knit across and knit my tail in. Like I said, nobody has ever noticed that it's a little thicker or anything here, because it's just one extra piece of yarn. You're going to weave it in some way anyways, so I just usually do it right now, just so it's too small to carry, and then I just knit the rest of the way. We made it to the end, so let's pull our cord through here. And it's a long cord, and it's a narrow cord, so let's not kink it. Pull it through here, and then pull our needle out on the other side. It's just basically kind of like magic loop. We've got 32 stitches on each side of our sock tube, and we are just knitting, making sure that when you bring this first stitch over that you really pull it tight so that you do not have a hole there. Now, if you're using 9-inch circulars, you don't have to. You won't have a hole because you're just knitting in the round. I can't do 9-inch circulars. They're too small for my fingers, and my fingers cramp up when I'm using them. I need the longer needles. Okay. We're almost to the end here, and I'll show you again what I've done for my to keep away from getting holes here. And you're going to do whatever toe you normally do. Okay, so we're at the end. So I still have my slip stitch, but I'm just going to pull that tight, wrap that around there with my yarn that I'm using. With my yarn that I'm using, and just knit that stitch. Again, we're going to rotate and pull our needle through. Oops. We're moving our cushion. We're moving everything. Our cord's a little too long for this, but it works. Okay. So now we're here at our slip stitch that we have, and we're just going to make sure that we pull all of this nice and tight, and especially this carry yarn that came from the previous stitch. Make sure we get that nice and tight as we go through here. And then we're going to carry those two along and just knit along here again. And that takes care of not having a hole there when you join your yarn. And then I work this till I have just a little bit of a tail. When I go by, I'll show you what I do here. I just take this one and I give it a pull just so it tightens that stitch up there and there's not a baggy, saggy stitch there. Okay, that should be good. And then I can just knit around all the way around. And I will do one more round of full knit so that I can get rid of all of my double carried yarn stitches before I do a decrease. And then you're just going to do your normal toe decreases. Every other round, you decrease, and you do whatever toe you want. If you've got a toe specific that you do, at this point, you're doing whatever toe you want for your sock. So, I mean, I usually do a longer foot before I decrease because I don't decrease that many stitches on a toe. I usually I decrease to 18 stitches on my toe, 18 on each needle, because I have a wider foot and I don't like the pointiness of the toe. It just doesn't feel like it fits. So I do a few more rounds on my foot here, straight knitting, before I start decreasing. But I usually do at least, I think I do 5 rounds, and a lot of them tell you to do like 4 or 5 rounds before you start decreasing, just to get your stitches acclimated, and that way you don't have to worry about having any decreasing, losing any stitches when you're trying to pick up your double stitches. But again, I know where my front, where I started. This is my needle for the beginning of round. So I'm just going to put this up here so I know that when I get, no, this is my beginning of round on this side. No, I'm right. This is my beginning of round. Oh my God, I'm confused. When I get to this corner here, that lets me know that I've finished one full round. So I'm halfway through to do my next set of stitches on the back half, and then I will just decrease and work my toe till I go to Kitchener it off. And then, you know, it's just a normal Kitchener stitch. Yes, the pattern will be in the Knitting for Socks, Knitting from a Sock Tube PDF that I have down below from Liftbridge. How to decrease is in there for the Kitchener stitch on your toe. So that is how I do my toes of my socks. I do them very similar when I go to hide the holes. And like I said, you can't see any holes here on either side. And this is the side that we started with. So there is no holes anymore, which is nice. Okay, so that is how I do my toe of my sock. Okay, now that we have our toe all done on our sock, we want to remeasure to mark for our heel. We want to make sure that we are remeasuring because we want to make sure that our toe is in the correct, that our heel is in the correct place. If we put a couple extra stitches on the toe, we want to make sure that we are still putting the heel in the correct place. A row or two is not going to matter, but if you're already putting it at a negative ease, it's not going to matter. But if you're not putting it at a negative ease and you're making the sock fit perfectly, this is going to be a big deal. So you really need to make sure that you remeasure for your sock or for your heel. Okay, so I need 5 inches, just over 5. So you want to, the other thing that you need to make sure you do, this was not important until right now. When you do your cuff, it doesn't matter, it's in the round. There's not on each side on your cuff. When you do your toe, you are making sides for your toe. So you need to make sure that you use it, lay it flat, and find your sides so that you can have your heel in the mid evenly with your toe. So this is very important that you do this to make sure before you start picking up your stitches that you make sure you have it laying correctly. Okay, so let's figure out where we need to put our toe. Now I did a couple extra rows here, so I'm going to go right here for my extra rows, and this right at the bottom of this 5 right here is where we are picking up our stitches. Okay, so that's where I'm going to pick up. I only have 1 row. Okay. So I got to pick up a row on each side of this to put my heel in. And I don't need 2 sets of needles. I can do this with 1. And again, we're going to make sure it's this row right here that we are that we are pulling out. So we're going to go right here and we make sure we pick up 32 stitches. We're only going halfway across this time. So every other, picking up our stitches, making sure we stay in the row that we need to. I had to pull these all out because I ended up half in the row that I was taking out. That's why it was tight. I was in 2 different rows. So just making sure that you're staying in the row that you need. It does help to pull it out a little bit, but don't pull it too much so that it just distorts your stitch and you end up grabbing the wrong one. And that's what I did. Okay. So I'm going to cross here. When you're in the right row, they slide pretty easy. They're tight, but they're not too tight. And I think I need 1 more. Let's pick that one up. We can always drop it if we don't need it. Count our stitches, make sure we have 32, and then we'll pull our cord all the way through. 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. Okay, so we're just going to pull our cord all the through. Okay, now we're going to flip it around, and it's just easier to come from the back from this side over, making sure that we've got a row in between. So now it's easier to see our row, and then we can just pick up our stitch, and we can just every other stitch here. And we know we have a row in between. And again, this thinner cord definitely does help, especially when you're doing this and you only have to pick up half the stitches. You definitely do not want your needle in here because it gets tight. One more. Oh, there went my needle. One more stitch. There's my end stitch. Okay. Make sure I count again to make sure I have them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. Okay, I'm just going to pull this through just so that my needles are not in here and it's not tight. It does make it so much easier to pull out this row if the needles are not in here and it's just the cords. So I usually pull them out so that I have just the cords in here, and it just makes it a little bit easier. So again, we are going to pull up this stitch. We can do it with our needle. Take our marker out of here. Pull up with our needle, and I usually get in there. I like to do it so that I can pull it away so that I know that I'm not cutting anything other than just that stitch. Okay, so now we're going to pull from each way, but we're not going to pull all of our stitches completely out. We're going to leave 2 stitches on each corner, on each end. That just allows you to not have a hole, because you have those 2 stitches there that you didn't pull out, so there's no hole. Those stitches stay right in. So we're just, and the first couple are a little difficult until you can actually see your yarn. You can actually spread it apart and see where you need to pull the stitch you need to pull out. If you don't get right in the middle of your stitch and it starts to separate, that's when you end up getting a fuzzy tail and everything is tight. So just be slow, take your time. It's not a race to get these stitches out of here. You don't want to take too many, and you don't want to have to cut your yarn because that's not a big piece to weave in. You want to make sure you have tails to weave in. Okay, so as you can see, there's still 4 stitches there. So I'm gonna, oh, I split my stitch there. And the stitch might be split on its own with the sock tube. It is. Okay. Yeah, the sock tube, when it got stitched, it split a stitch. Okay. A little rough on it there. It tightened all these other stitches right up. Okay, let's pull up. Separate it here a little bit. There we go. There's only that one time. Okay. So we are going to take this. And this is where we can, there's still 3 stitches left. And this is where we can make sure that we have our yarn coming the correct way. So we can leave it so it comes from the back and then just bring it in when we knit our first stitch. It's not really going to matter. We're not going to have a hole here. So I probably will bring it to the front so that I can just knit it into this one. But I left 2 stitches right there on the needles. Okay. Those are hooked in. Okay, so now we'll go to the other side. We're going to pull these stitches out. And you want to try to get it in the center of those stitches as best you can. You don't have to count, but just really guesstimate. You don't want to pull out over here and not have a decent amount of yarn to weave in your ends, because you need to weave in the ends. Otherwise, it will, the heel will come off. Okay. So again, we're going over here till we have 2 or 3 stitches left. And I only usually like to leave 2, because to me 3 seem to be a little bit too much. Okay. So I am going to pull it out so that there's my 2 stitches left on the needles. That way my yarn is over on this side. So I'm going to start over here with my heel stitch, weave this end in, and when I get around to this side, I'm going to weave that end in. Again, you're going to do this the same way as you did your, well, actually, I'm going to start on this side because that's where my needles are. But either way, my needles are here. The yarn is on this side. You're going to do the same as you did here as you did for your toe. You're just going to cast on your stitches, do 2 or 3 rounds. Actually, they might say in the pattern. Let me look at the pattern and what it tells you for your, it tells you to go to, I wasn't sure, for your heel. Yeah, it says do the heel exactly as you do the toe. So if you know, I usually do 3 or 4 rounds before I start decreasing for my heel, the same as I do my toe. So I will pick up my stitches and start doing my toe. And now that you have these extra stitches in here, they're a little tight when you go to work them the first time, but after that, you don't even notice that you didn't pull out all of your stitches. It just does really help to make sure that you don't have a hole. But yeah, so let's, now my yarn is on the second stitch, so I'm not going to pick that yarn up until I get to the 3rd stitch. Where's my tail here? There it is. Oh, I just put a knot in it. Come on. There we go. Okay. Should have had that out beforehand. But you leave as much of a tail as you want to leave on your knitting. I usually don't because I don't like to have a lot to knit in, but I leave a little bit. So those ones are a little tight just because they are still in, there's still stitches in them. So now I This one is already, stitch is already in there. And then I just carry all of my yarn all the way across till I start running out. And as you can see, I'm going into the back loop because I picked up the wrong one. So I just, if I pick up the wrong one, I just knit into the back loop. Picked up the wrong leg. And I could switch it. I mean, I can just switch it out here. Either way, it's the same if you knit into the back loop or you switch it out. Sometimes I pick up some correctly, some wrong. I just can just switch it out if you need to. One more row with that, and then I can drop that, and then just do my one skein. Okay. And then when we get to the other side, we're going to definitely knit those stitches that are still connected. And like I said, they're a little tight because there's already stitches in them. But that's okay. We only have to do them one time. It's not like we have to keep knitting into them. This is the only time. It just keeps us from having those holes. Okay. Pull our needle through. Sorry, I'm trying to do this. I'm hoping as I go to video, I'm hoping I'm in the screen. So again, we have our tail there. First two stitches are the ones that are connected still, a little tight, but you don't have to pull this as tight because there isn't going to be a hole. Okay, and now we get this one with our stitch already in it. It's already wrapped around, so let's wrap her. It's only going to be 2 wrapped around this time instead of 3 because we only have the tail. But again, I picked up the wrong stitches, so we are just knitting into the back loop to make sure that we have a good knit stitch. And just do this all the way across. It is actually easier just for video, and it's actually easier to show you because I have to rotate my hand around something fierce to get the stitch there. Okay, so now we're just at the end of our tail. Just finish this up and then pick up our last couple of stitches here that are already connected. Like I said, they get a little tight. This is the only time that it's just a little bit fiddly here. I'm hoping there's not too much of a glare on here. I have an extra light. It's actually today's a sunny day out. But okay, so we got all of our stitches picked up. Now we're just going to go around and knit again, and we're probably going to do 2 more rows of knitting, 2 or 3 more rows of straight knitting before we start doing our decrease for our heel itself. But that's how we get our stitches. And again, Kirby Wirby has a really good tutorial for picking up your stitches and doing for cutting in for an afterthought heel. So I will link her video down below, but that is going to be how I pick up my heels, cut and pick up for my heel. Okay, so I will get you a picture when we're done with our heel here, and I'll show you what the sock looks like. Well, we got our sock done. Got our heel, toe, and cuff added onto our sock. Okay. So let's put it on and see how it fits. A shorty sock. Goes just to the ankle. So I have one of my socks done. I will get the other one done and we will have a pair of short socks. These will be good for spring when I really don't need a long sock. They're a little shorter than what I normally like, but I wanted to see what I could get out of that leftover sock tube, and I didn't want another full long pair of socks. So we'll end up having shorter socks. The next set will be even shorter here, so I'll just make sure I do a longer cuff on the other set of socks just so that they will be at least this long, if not a little bit longer. But that is it for this series on sock tubes for dummies. I hope you guys learned something from the series, and that is going to be it for today's the last video of the sock tube. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope it benefits it. It allows you to take on doing sock tubes. So that is going to be it for this series. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing to my videos. I really appreciate all of you, and have a good day. Bye.